She was wearing my father's watch, the one I kept in a velvet box on the top shelf of the closet, the one she swore she'd never touched because she said old jewelry creeped her out. But there it was on her wrist at 2 a.m. in a photo she didn't know existed, sitting at a hotel bar laughing at something a man in a gray suit had just whispered into her ear. I'm Daniel. I'm 46 years old. And by the end of that week, my wife Corinne would learn what happens when a quiet man finally decides to stop being quiet. I met Corinne 11 years ago at a charity auction in Raleigh. She was bidding on a landscape painting nobody else wanted. I bought it for her without telling her. Had it delivered to her office the next morning with just my phone number on the card. She called me within the hour. We were engaged 14 months later. I work as a structural engineer. Bridges, mostly. Boring work to most people, but I like the math. I like that a bridge either holds or it doesn't. There's no middle ground, no gray area, no... It depends. Corinne was a regional director for a chain of boutique hotels. She traveled 3-4 nights a month. She had a silver Audi she treated like a child in a closet full of navy blazers. She ran half marathons. She remembered the names of every waiter at every restaurant we ever visited twice. We lived in a restored craftsman house in a quiet neighborhood outside Asheville, North Carolina. We had a golden retriever named Otis and a set of inherited china we never used. On paper, we had everything. And for 11 years, I believed the paper. It started with the watch, actually, not the photo. That came later. It started when I went to wind my father's old Hamilton on a Sunday morning, the way I always did on the first of every month, and I noticed the crown had been pulled out a full click. I hadn't done that. Nobody else should have touched it. I asked her casually, passing her in the kitchen, "Did you move Dad's watch?" She didn't look up from her coffee. "Why would I touch that dusty thing?" "I don't know. It was open." "Maybe Otis knocked it." She smiled at me over the rim of her cup. "Relax, Danny. Otis couldn't reach the top shelf. Otis couldn't reach the middle shelf. But I nodded, and I let it go. Then came the perfume. She'd worn the same bergamot scent for 8 years, a bottle I bought her every Christmas from a small shop in Charleston. Suddenly she smelled like something else when she came home from her Tuesday runs. Something warmer, spiced, heavier. Like she'd been somewhere that wasn't a trail. "New body wash," she said when I asked. "The hotel carries it now." I took a sample. Third flag. Her phone. She used to leave it face up on the counter like a normal person. Now it lived in her pocket. Now she turned it over before setting it down. Now she took it with her into the bathroom. Now she laughed at something on the screen, and when I asked what was funny, she said, "A meme. You wouldn't get it," and swiped it closed. Fourth flag. The mileage. I handle the cars, oil changes, tire rotations. I keep a little notebook in the glove box of each one. Her Audi was racking up 300 extra miles a week that didn't match any of her listed meetings. I checked her calendar. I checked her expense reports, which she'd left on the kitchen table. The numbers didn't line up. Fifth flag was the worst because it was the smallest. One night she said without thinking, "I'll pick up dinner on my way back from Charlotte." But she'd told me that morning she was driving to Knoxville. I watched her face when she realized the slip. Her eyes flickered for half a second. Then she laughed. "I meant Knoxville. God, I'm exhausted." I said, "Long week." And I went back to pretending I hadn't noticed. But I had noticed. And once a man starts noticing, he cannot unnotice. The photo came to me by accident. That's the part that still feels like a bad joke. Corinne used a shared photo stream with her sister Megan for family pictures. Otis in a Santa hat, birthdays, whatever. She'd set it up years ago on her old phone and forgot it was still running in the background. I was scrolling through my own photos one Saturday morning looking for a picture of a bridge joint to send to a colleague, and the shared stream popped up in my album. There were 47 photos in it from the last 6 weeks. None of them were Otis. I sat on the edge of the bed. Corinne was downstairs making pancakes. I could smell the butter. I could hear her humming that little tuneless thing she did when she was happy. And I scrolled. There she was at a hotel bar, wearing my father's watch, leaning toward a man whose face was partially cropped out. There she was in a rental car, sunglasses on, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on someone's knee. Someone in khaki pants. Not my pants. I don't own khakis. There she was in a hotel robe, mirror selfie, making a face at the camera. The reflection in the mirror behind her showed a man sitting on the bed in boxers, reading something on his phone, his back to the camera. A tattoo of a compass on his left shoulder blade. I didn't know anyone with a compass tattoo. And there, finally, the one that made my hands go numb, was a screenshot of a text conversation, accidentally saved to the camera roll the way people sometimes do when they mean to send a picture and hit the wrong button. He leaves for Nashville Tuesday. 3 whole nights. Bring the red shirt. The one you like me ripping? That one. I didn't throw up. I didn't cry. I just sat there holding the phone while butter burned 3 rooms away and my wife hummed a song I'd been hearing for 11 years and never understood was the sound of her lying. Then I did something I'm still proud of. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't confront her. I didn't smash anything. I took screenshots of every single photo and every single text. I emailed them to a private account she didn't know I had. I closed the shared stream. I walked downstairs. I ate 3 pancakes. And I told her they were the best she'd ever made. I gave myself 11 days. 1 for every year she'd taken from me. Monday I called Reese Holloway, a divorce attorney my college roommate had used 3 years earlier. I told him everything. He listened for 40 minutes without interrupting, which is the most expensive silence I've ever paid for. Then he asked me 2 questions. How much of this can you prove without her knowing you're building a case? All of it. Do you want quiet or do you want loud? I thought about that one for a long time. I want fair, I finally said. She thinks I'm too decent to fight. I want her to understand she was wrong about that, but I don't want to become her. Reese told me exactly what to do. I pulled 3 years of bank statements. I pulled her credit card records from the shared account. I mapped every charge at every hotel against her claimed travel. I found a suite at the Grove Park Inn charged twice a month for the last 14 months. I found jewelry purchases I'd never seen worn in our house. I found a men's watch from a boutique in Charlotte engraved $800. Not a gift she'd given me. Not a gift she'd ever mentioned. I opened a separate checking account. I moved exactly half of the joint savings into it, not $1 more, and I left a note in my own records explaining why, time-stamped, witnessed by Reese. I transferred the deed research on our house to a folder labeled Bridge Retrofit 2024, so she wouldn't open it if she snooped. At night, I smiled at her. I asked about her runs. I complimented her new perfume. I kissed her forehead before bed. She started to relax. I could feel her relaxing. She thought the danger had passed. She thought whatever had been in the air 3 weeks ago had blown out the window. On day 9, she hugged me in the kitchen and said, "I feel like we're finally getting back to us." I said, "Me too." And I meant something entirely different than she did. I chose Thursday. She was supposed to be driving to Greenville that morning for a 2-night stay. Another site inspection. I watched her pack. She took the red shirt. She didn't see me see it. She kissed me at the door. She said, "Miss you already." She drove away. I waited 40 minutes. Then I drove to the Grove Park Inn. I didn't barge in. That's not my style. And it wasn't the plan. I sat in the lobby with a book and a coffee. At 11:47 a.m., Corinne walked through the lobby in a dress I'd never seen. Behind her, 15 feet back, was a man in khakis and a gray blazer, mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, compass tattoo presumably tucked beneath his collar. They took separate elevators. Amateur hour. I took a photo. Time-stamped, geo-tagged, clear as daylight. Then I drove home, poured myself a bourbon, and called her. "Hey," she said brightly. The background was quiet. Hotel, quiet. I just got to Greenville. Traffic was awful. "That's funny," I said, "because I'm looking at a photo of you in the Grove Park lobby 90 minutes ago." A pause. A long one. "Danny, don't. Just listen. I have everything. The shared stream, the texts, the hotel charges going back 14 months. Reese Holloway is my attorney. The papers will be served at your office Monday morning at 9 a.m. so your assistant sees them. I want you to come home now and pack a bag. You have 2 hours before I change the locks. Don't bring him." She started crying. It was a performance, but a good one. 11 years of practice. "Daniel, please let me explain. It wasn't what—" "Corinne." I kept my voice flat. "You wore my father's watch to meet him. That's the part I can't forgive. Everything else I might have, but not that." Silence. 2 hours, I said, and I hung up. She was home in 90 minutes. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her makeup had run. She sat at the kitchen island and she tried every approach, one after another, like a salesman running through scripts. First, denial. It was one mistake. It's been going on a few weeks. I slid a printed spreadsheet across the counter. 14 months of charges highlighted in yellow. Then, minimization. It wasn't serious. I was lonely. You were always working. I slid the photo of her wearing my father's watch across the counter. Then, blame. You haven't looked at me in years, Danny. You treat me like furniture. I didn't slide anything for that one. I just looked at her. Finally, the collapse. What do you want? Tell me what you want. I'll do anything. Counseling. I'll quit the job. I'll cut him off right now. I'll call him in front of you. I want you to leave the watch on the counter, I said, and I want you out by 5. She left the watch. She packed 2 suitcases. She tried, at the door, to hug me. I stepped back. Not out of cruelty. Just because I didn't want her scent on my shirt anymore. The divorce took 4 months. Reese had built the case so cleanly that her attorney recommended she settle on the first offer. North Carolina isn't a fault state in the way some people think, but adultery affects alimony, and the documentation was bulletproof. She kept her Audi and her retirement account. I kept the house, the dog, and my father's watch. The man with the compass tattoo was named Paul Ashworth. He was a regional VP for a competing hotel group. I didn't contact him. I didn't need to. His wife of 22 years found the photos herself 6 weeks later. Corinne, careless to the end, had posted one of them to an Instagram story she thought was set to close friends only. The Ashworths divorced within the year. I heard about it through a mutual acquaintance at a conference. I didn't ask for details. Corinne tried to reach out twice. Once in November, a long email about therapy and accountability. Once in February, a shorter one that said only, "I think about what I did to you every day." I didn't reply. Not out of spite. I just didn't have anything to say to her that would help either of us. Otis sleeps at the foot of my bed now. He never liked her much, actually. Dogs know. A year later, I was walking across the pedestrian bridge I'd designed in downtown Asheville, the one that opened the spring after the divorce, and I stopped at the midpoint and looked down at the French Broad River moving underneath. And I thought, this thing will hold for 80 years. I know because I calculated it. I know what I built. That's the lesson, I guess. You can't calculate a person the way you calculate a bridge, but you can choose what you build next, and you can choose what you refuse to carry across. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments.